I was going to say it would be core for an AGM, so we're yeah we're halfway there. Right, I'm going to mute everyone initially, say a few words, and then go through some questions that we've already got, and then I'm sure others will have questions that come in on the chat. So if you've got questions, please put them on the chat section, and I'll pick them up later on. Okay. So let's mute you all.
Oh, Frank.
Right. You can't hear each other now. You can just hear my dulcet tones, I'm afraid. You'll have to put up with that for a while. Thank you for joining and for the interest in what we've got to say. I'm going to start on the online voting, which is the obvious place to start, I think. The purpose of it is not to replace an AGM or an EGM. It is purely for situations like this where an AGM or an EGM isn't either possible or appropriate. So we have some issues that obviously we're going through at the moment that need decisions made and taken that would normally be taken at an AGM or an EGM. The intention is to send out a survey over the next couple of weeks to vote on, and the vote will be on whether to allow online voting initially. If the vote on that will be 75% majority from those votes that are cast, and then the secondary vote will be on the bounce back loan that we propose to take, which we'll cover a bit later, but I'm going to cover the online voting to start with. I'm going to start with some questions, because the online voting is hopefully very simple in that a survey will be sent out to everyone that we have email addresses for, a link to the survey. We have 13 voting members who don't have an email address. They would be posted out to both the survey and the explanation behind it, to be able to get answers back from them should they so wish. So it will be open to all voting members. The SurveyMonkey question, we get results directly from the SurveyMonkey survey. So we don't have to collate all the results ourselves. They're done independently, so all the results can be published straight from there. And equally, people can be named or not named as they want to, as we did in the club survey last year, which was, from what I recollect, it was anonymous, and people didn't have to give their names if they didn't want to. So that's I guess the way we're looking to do it. A few questions. Will the voting method in these exceptional times be for just this one occasion until a separate EGM, AGM is held? The intention is that it will just be for this occasion initially, but we wouldn't like to limit it to that, because if we have similar circumstances and we need decisions made by the members in the future, then it would be the same sort of situation, and we don't have to go to the members again to say, can we have an online vote again to get something else through? It's not intended to replace AGMs and EGMs, but it could be a useful tool for voting when a physical meeting isn't possible. Effectively, this will be an EGM type situation. What is the current notice period for an EGM? Surely we should, as a minimum, adhere to these timescales. The timescale for an EGM can be either 14 days or 21 days, depending on what the subject of it is. However, that from our point of view, that is notification for a meeting at a set time and on a set date, meaning more notice is required if people are going to be available for that date. So our suggestion, which is open to suggestion, if you like, it's not set in stone, is that the online vote would have a 7-day period, a 7-day notification period, and then 2 days in which to complete the vote, which should be as simple as clicking about 5-6 buttons, something like that. So you would get an email, you click on the link on the email, and then the questions would come up. And if it's only 2 questions, yes or no, then it wouldn't be a complicated way of doing it, and it should be very quick. So the suggestion is 7 days notification before the vote goes out, 2 days to vote, and then we get a fairly speedy response. How will we deal with those members who do not have the benefit of modern technology? I've already explained that. The vote and the details would go out in the post, and the intention would be that it would go out in the post prior. Sorry, there's in a couple more people. It would go out in the post prior to it going live for people online, and then it would give them the time in which to send the votes back. And as I said, there are only 13 members who are affected that way. Why is the voting period so narrow? Takes no account of the future when people are away or in hospital and miss the opportunity to cast a vote. Well, most people, wherever they are, will have a mobile phone, and most people's mobile phones are compatible with email, and therefore they will get the email and be able to vote. So I don't think it needs a very wide window. It could be expanded to 3 or 4 days, but I don't necessarily think that's necessary. How will the board communicate all aspects of the proposal to the whole membership, not just those on email? We've already said that it will be posted out. Who will be responsible for verifying the result of the vote? It will be verified by SurveyMonkey, which produces a result for us, and any additional postal votes, if you like, will be available for anyone to look at. Or to see the result of, but with only 13, it's unlikely to affect the result, although it could do. What percentage of the membership is required to accept the proposal, or is it just those actually cast a vote? If it's done the same as an AGM and an EGM, which is what we're proposing, the vote for online voting, if you like, would need a 75% majority of the votes cast, as it would be in an AGM. The future vote on the bank loan would be a straight majority of those cast from the way that we see it. What procedures are in place to ensure compliance with GDPR, and particularly the manner in which individuals cast their vote? As I've said, SurveyMonkey does that for us. And what process will be in place for questions, as importantly, the response from the board? That's the purpose of a meeting like this, such as Zoom, and there's no reason why we couldn't hold another Zoom meeting prior to the voting period. And there will also be time within the 7-day notification period when the details come out with exactly what is being voted on. There will be time for questions through the normal communication channels such as email, phone, and we would happily publish the questions and answers to that should it be relevant. So those are some quite comprehensive questions. Don't know whether anyone's got any further questions on that they want to put on the chat. But it doesn't look as though they have. In which case, we'll move on to the online, the bank loan, the bounce back loan that we're proposing. We've had some questions on that as well, which I'm going to pass over to Roy for. But if you've got any questions on either the online voting or the bounce back loan, please do put them in the chat, and I'll be back to answer them in a bit.
Evening all. Sorry, only one laptop working, that's why we had to switch places. Those questions, by the way, that David was reading out and giving answers to were from Tony Welsh. The ones I'm just about to deal with were actually aimed at Chris, who isn't here, couldn't be here, and is actually on the other end of this listening. Hi, Chris. And there's 3 questions from Kevin Hodges, which relate to the bank loan. The first of which is, what is our current financial position and what is his projection, that's Chris's, for this to be at the year end? He obviously doesn't trust me, without using the loan. So the answer to that is, the only way I can answer the question about our current financial position is to talk about cash. At the moment, we have approximately £200,000 cash in the bank. And to put that into some kind of context, that's about 30,000 in rough numbers behind where we were this time last year. And although actually that sounds like a very comfortable figure at the moment, it really isn't, or may not be. Because at the moment we benefited from the maximum amount of rebates that we could possibly use for furloughing people. And obviously as time goes on and we've added two of the greenkeepers back into the mix, and then we've added additional staff in the office, Kelly has come back. And as time goes on and we open up more and more of the services in the clubhouse to the membership, that those furlough rebates will become wages. So over time that will taper off, and we also know that the furlough rebates, or the government support on furlough payments, is going to be reduced and tapered off. So we will probably be burning through cash faster than we would in a normal year. And at the same time, we have some still pretty uncertain revenue streams in terms of how we're going to go for society revenue, general green fee income, what the bar and catering revenue is likely to be like. So having said all of that, we've made, because we've had to, made assumptions on our own best, they are best guesses, they're guesstimates, based on previous trading performance, but also as best we can, allowing for the current circumstances, and who knows what might happen if the worst happens and we get a second spike and things have to change again. But on all our best estimates at the moment, being realistic, we think not overly optimistic or overly pessimistic, we will finish the year with a small trading surplus, circa 25 to 30,000, if everything goes as we predicted. But that is obviously subject to change in both directions. And again, to put that in context, the last forecast that we did before all of the lockdown hit and the scale of the virus problems became obvious, our year's forecast was for a trading surplus of 65, 67,000 pounds, something like that. And in the past, that trading surplus has been up at 100,000. So at the moment, I don't think there's any need for anybody to panic, but neither is it incredibly comfortable with lots of room in either the forecasts or our cash position, despite the 200,000. Kevin's second question is, if the loan is unused and only partially used, will all of the unused part be repaid before the interest-free period runs out? Yes, that's my current view. We're going for the loan on the basis of it being a safety net. Whatever element of that safety net we don't need, it would be better, I think, to actually pay that off and not have the debt. Although if we do decide to keep the debt going, some part of the debt going forward, it is at a maximum 2.5% interest rate, and so it isn't by any means a draconian load for the business to carry, and it can go on for up to 6 years. So at the moment, the current intention would be yes, to answer yes to that question. We would pay it back and get it out of the way. Done. Cost us nothing. Done. And we have actually 13 months to do that. But the other thing to remember is we have already increased, if you like, the period over which the cash has to carry us, because we've effectively extended the club year to 13 months. So that will affect the first quarter of next year. But we are currently now at a stage where if we had the loan now, we wouldn't actually have to pay it back until, I believe it's July of 2021. So there's a bit of room to make our minds up later about the final answer to that question. But in my mind, if we don't need it, we pay it back. When do we intend applying for the loan? We actually applied yesterday. And the reason why at the last Zoom meeting I announced that that was our intention and wanted to carry on and actually clarify the whole situation on it was because it started when the bounce back loan was initially announced, which was about 2.5 months ago. We started then inquiring of the bank what processes we would need to go through in order to get it. And it has taken from there until just coincidentally and ironically yesterday for the bank to come up with a solution to our very complicated mandate, because it needs 2 signatures. Now, I should think that's probably common to about 90% of the businesses who are not sole traders in this country for any loan or any commitment of over probably £5,000. But somehow it has taken the bank 2.5 months to come up with an application form that you can fill in if you actually require more than 1 signature on your bank mandate, which we do. So the answer is we applied yesterday. We don't have the money yet. And at the moment we are still waiting to hear, but that was the first occasion on which we'd actually even been able to put the application form in place. So I hope that's clear. If you have any further questions on that, then by all means stick them on the chat line and we'll pick up on them from there. Okay, I'm going to hand back to David now to pick up on the chat line.
Hello again. Right. One question from Therese. In your email on Monday, you say that even though these will be voted on and assuming they're approved, that they will then be ratified and enshrined at an AGM. What do you mean by that? Okay. Our intention is that if the online voting gets approved at the next AGM or EGM, we would list the items that have been voted on online in the meantime since the last AGM, so that it's clear to everyone on the agenda, it's clear to everyone on in the AGM what has been done between the meetings, if anything. So we're not trying to hide the fact that we would be making a decision or decisions in the meantime, but we would make it perfectly clear so that it was obvious what rules had been changed or had been or rules or articles been changed, so that everyone is as clear as they can be about it. So the items are actually brought up at the meeting as well as just being done online.
David, I'm going to unmute myself. It won't change the result of the online vote though, will it?
That's the intention, correct? The online vote, if it's voted for, will be a vote that will stand, but it is more for information and to make sure everyone is clear as to the process and what has been done. But there's no point in having online voting if it's not going to be a decision that can be carried forward. Any other questions? This is much quieter than meetings when we were closed and people had questions about everything.
Do you want to talk about anything else?
Who's waving at me? Richard's waving at me. Let me unmute you, Richard. I think.
Can you hear me now?
I can, Richard. Yes.
You know, with regard to the voting procedure that you just outlined earlier before Roy, I think you said there was from the time that you sent out the postal vote, there would be 9 days plus 2. Is that correct? Or sorry, 7 days plus 2.
Correct.
For people to make their vote and return their vote.
Yes.
We might get
Okay.
I mean, if the postal votes might need a bit longer than that. That's something that we've only really considered over the last couple of days, and we haven't come up with a time frame that will be realistic for that. It might be that we need a longer period for the postal ones to come back, even if it is.
That was basically my question. You know, I don't think that's long enough for postal votes.
Okay. No, fair point. And as I say, it's something that we're happy to consider as a timescale that we need to look at.
all those 13 people.
Yeah, I mean, 13 people, it's not a large number, but everyone has the right to vote. So they need to have the time to be able to do it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Sammy.
Hi, David.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, David. Obviously, for those people who are here at this meeting tonight, I sent an email to David and Roy expressing my views of the voting system electronically. I'm not totally in agreement that it should happen, because I believe that the democratic right of all members is to have the availability to vote by all means, not necessarily just by post or by electronically. And how will we guarantee that when people press the button to vote yes or no, what guarantees will we have that your vote will be received?
When people vote electronically, it automatically goes onto the SurveyMonkey system to be recorded. So as long as people do it correctly, as in press the right buttons, then it will be included in the vote.
I personally am unaware what this SurveyMonkey system is. Could you explain that to me, exactly what it is and how it works?
SurveyMonkey is a system that you can design a questionnaire on with questions that will be a yes or no answer, although there's normally space for comments as well. But the results are collated back into a central place, and for 2 simple questions such as this probably would be, in terms of do you approve online voting and do you approve the bounce back loan, it's literally clicking yes, yes, submit, as far as I'm aware, or no, submit, or yes, no, or whichever way people want to vote. So, go on, Sammy.
But this online voting system, is that just going to be temporary while the COVID-19 is in position, or is it the plans for the club to continue with this on?
Sammy, you're fading out a bit, but I got the question. The answer is basically it would still be in place. It's not something we'd look to use on a regular basis, but it's something that we would like to be available in case this sort of situation occurs again when we can't hold an AGM or an EGM. Or something has to happen, yeah, if something has to move very quickly that we need an answer from members on very quickly for whatever reason. It's not going to happen on a regular basis from my point of view, but to have the ability to do it would be useful when we've got situations such as this.
But from a personal point of view, last year, myself and Jackie tried to organise something, and we asked the people who'd been invited to contact Jackie by email to say yes or no, that they would be available to attend. And it's amazing how many people, and you wouldn't believe who they are, who could not even send an email. So I do feel that if we are to continue down this road of electronic voting, I do feel a lot of the members, or some members, may not be qualified to be able to vote.
Well, if people have a problem with it, then they can contact us, and we'll make that clear. But when we sent out the club survey last year, we had a higher response rate than we expected, and actually slightly higher than the national average. So it would be done in exactly the same way. A link on an email that people click the link to go through to the survey. So it would be no different to what we've already done in terms of a survey previously.
David, it's Bill. I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just have a question. If the vote was contested, is there any hard copy produced that could be given to whoever might contest the vote?
Yeah, we would get the SurveyMonkey results. We would be able to either show someone on the screen what the results were, or we would be able to print off the results to show it, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, David.
Just to take up Sammy's original point, does the SurveyMonkey send a message back to the sender? Does the SurveyMonkey send a message back to the sender to say that their vote has been received or recorded?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Someone who's filled out the questionnaire from last year would be able to tell us. Marlene's shaking her head, so I'm guessing it doesn't. But it might be something on the system that we can put that as a preference, that we want that to happen. I've got one question that's come in. Did England Golf recommend clubs apply for the bounce back loans? Are England Golf offering financial help to clubs? Are they in a better position to get financial support than individual clubs? England Golf are offering financial support, but only to those clubs who have rules and articles that comply with their conditions. And that when we voted against when we as a club voted against the practice area development with the short course that we were planning, the changes to the rules and articles that were proposed then would have been fine for England Golf, and hence we would have got the funding from Sport England. But as our rules and articles are now, with the dissolution clause, with the proceeds of the club being sold going to the members, that does not comply with England Golf's requirements in terms of financial help. So no, we wouldn't be able to get a loan from them. Have they recommended clubs apply for bounce back loans? They haven't. They've basically said to all clubs, do what you can, without being much more help than that. I know a number of companies whose accountants have said, apply for what you can, apply for the bounce back loan. You can't lose from it, because if you don't use it, you can just pay it back straight away. If you do use it, then you use it because it's needed, not because not because it's there for use just for the sake of it. And we wouldn't use it just for the sake of it. We would only use it if we absolutely needed to. Bill, does that answer your question? No, sorry, that wasn't Bill. That was a question on the.
May I just say something, David, if I may?
Yes, Kevin. Yeah.
You know the correspondence that we've had. I'm not going to delve into that, but it seems to me that the essence of the voting system being changed was primarily to be able to then go forward to get agree a bounce back loan, and yet you've told us this evening that the bounce back loan has been applied for already. I agree with the bounce back loan, don't get me wrong. What I don't agree with is the necessity to change the voting situation as it stands at the moment, when hopefully by the end of the year we will be back to normal, November, December time, when we could have a proper AGM, and this could be on the AGM for debate and voted upon at that time. I can't see why it has to be done now.
I think there are two reasons. One is that the date currently is 4th of November, I believe, that the bounce back loan finishes. All applications have to be in by then. Although whether the government have got a set amount that they've got set aside for it, who knows? Whether they can check, whether they could change the rules and bring it forward, I don't know. We also don't know what. There's been talk about the possibility of a second spike when we go in towards winter. So I've heard August mentioned, I've heard October mentioned as two possible dates when there could be a second spike. If that happens, we could be completely closed down again, let alone the clubhouse, and we might not be able to have an AGM at that time either, in which case we potentially lose that amount of time to be able to apply for the loan.
Well, I don't think you do, because as I said to you before, if you set out exactly how you want to do it, it's that sound business sense, which I support, don't get me wrong. But if it had been set out on the basis that this is what we want to do in the normal course of business, we want to borrow this money, I don't think there's a member in the club that will say, no, don't do it. So why do we need to change the rule?
But it's against the rules of the club as they are at the moment.
Oh, I don't think it is.
And we as a board and a management team don't want to go against the rules of the club. That's the basics of it.
Well, it's no different to saying to the club, we want to go against the constitution and change the voting rules. And I don't think it is in the normal course of business. I think we could borrow that money, and I don't think anybody would object to it. I do not think they would.
Roy wants to say something.
Anyway,
just to warn you, there's only 1 minute left, or less than a minute left, so it might get cut off. But
Kev, you and I have already had this conversation by email. I take your point. I don't think anybody would vote against it, but I actually don't see what the objection is to actually moving us into the